Trump. This last name is now globally known and also a source of both love and hate. What is your opinion? Before the Trump surname became synonymous with high luxury and billions of dollars, things were not quite like that. To tell the truth, not even the surname was written like that. And in this video, you will learn the story of how the Trump family arrived in the United States and how they became so powerful. Today, the Trump family is synonymous with luxury and a lot of money. It's no wonder that Donald Trump's children not only continue their father's empire but also position themselves for roles of power and influence. However, if today the Trump surname is powerful, the same couldn't be said more than 100 years ago, and not even the surname was like this. Of German origin, the original surname is unclear and changed due to the migration of Donald Trump's grandfather to the United States, Frederick Trump. In 1885, Frederick became fatherless at the age of 16 and decided to leave life in Germany to try his luck in America. Upon arrival, he not only started a new life but also gained a new surname. It is not certain whether his original surname was Drumpf or even Drum. However, upon arriving in the USA, his documentation began to spell Trump, and his name Friedrich was Americanized and became Frederick. And that's how he went to live in New York City with some relatives who were already there. At the same time, he started working as a barber, the same profession as many of his compatriots in the city. Despite this, he shared housing with various relatives and saved most of what he earned to try for a better life. And the opportunity came 6 years later, when he heard that the city of Seattle had suffered a catastrophe due to a large fire that swept through some of its neighborhoods 2 years earlier. Thus, he moved to Seattle and acquired an abandoned restaurant. A property that he restored, giving rise not only to a new restaurant but also to a kind of gathering place. This is because, like him, many workers migrated to Seattle in search of opportunities, as the city began to recover, and needed a lot of labor to thrive again. With this large clientele of surrounding workers, Frederick's restaurant was well located to feed migrants and satisfy their desires. This is because, during the night, the restaurant also became known as a place full of prostitutes, considered the best in the city, which helped boost the business's popularity. It is not certain whether the businessmen gained only from the influx of people and the consumption of drinks and food in the restaurant or whether he had some other questionable source of income. However, the restaurant became an asset for the immigrant, who ended up selling it 3 years later with a huge profit. With money in hand, Frederick began looking for new business opportunities that could provide more comfort not only for him but also for the family he had formed during this time. And the opportunity arose from a kind of gold rush that was happening in the vicinity of Bennett City in Canada. The rush attracted thousands of people in pursuit of the golden dream, and these people would need services that an entrepreneur could provide. That's how Frederick bought a hotel in the city, which also had a restaurant that became popular in the region thanks to a famous horse meat dish. However, in 1918, after a career as an entrepreneur, Frederick passed away, leaving an estate of about $500,000 in today's values. He left his wife Elizabeth, who was 37 at the time, and their 3 children, among them the eldest, Fred, Donald Trump's father, who was 13 years old at the time. Surprisingly for the era, Elizabeth continued her husband's business and used the family's money to acquire some properties that gave rise to a small real estate business called Elizabeth Trump & Son. 5 years later, Fred would take over the business. Later on, he borrowed about $800 from his mother, at that time's value. The money would be used for an undertaking that Fred would initiate in New York City. At the time, the city was experiencing immense prosperity and was expanding significantly into the suburbs, where the working class began to build houses, giving rise to what would later be known as the American Dream. Around the same time, it is described that Fred would have dropped the F from his last name, signing as Frederick Trump rather than Trumpf. Additionally, he identified himself as of Swedish descent, not German. This was because, with Germany's involvement in both the First and later the Second World Wars, the businessman claimed that his German origin was viewed with prejudice by clients and partners in the American market. Therefore, He maintained the Swedish version until the 1980s when his son Donald Trump began to become nationally known, along with his true lineage. Back in the past, seizing the opportunity, Fred began buying old houses in New York neighborhoods such as the Bronx and Queens. After renovating the properties, he sold the houses with a great profit margin. In fact, it is reported that the first house operated by him using this method was bought for $800 and sold for $7,000. He began employing this method on increasingly larger scales. From the beginning, his philosophy was to maximize the use of all resources and tools. Even nails could not be wasted or thrown away. If a single nail was unusable, it had to be collected, and together with other invalid materials, it would later be sold as scrap, because every penny mattered. In this way, with maximum utilization and excellent profit margins, Fred Trump over the decades also became a builder, and in addition to renovations, he began constructing houses and small apartment buildings, known in the USA as condos. These buildings were also constructed in the outskirts of New York, especially in the Queens neighborhood, where the Trump family also built their home, which housed Fred's children, including Donald, who was born in 1946. The focus of the constructions was on American workers who were beginning to afford a mortgage for their long-awaited homes. The business was so productive that a publication in the 1950s even referred to Fred Trump as the Henry Ford of low-income housing construction. Thus, the Trump Organization was born, replacing Elizabeth Trump and Son, and has been housing the family's real estate ventures ever since. It was with this effort that over the years, Fred Trump became a prosperous businessman and later a millionaire, to the point where he could lend his son Donald over $1 million in the late 1970s, in the currency of that time, for his son to start his high-end luxury ventures in Manhattan. While Fred Trump built about 2,500 low-income apartments in the Queens region during his active years, Donald Trump specialized in taking the family activity to an even higher level, conquering Manhattan and the high-end luxury market from the 1970s onward. He transformed the Trump surname, once a source of shame, into a billion-dollar brand, a symbol of high luxury. Despite everything, when Fred Trump passed away in 1999, he had accumulated a fortune estimated at over $250 million, left to his children and grandchildren. A massive amount, but much smaller than the $7 billion attributed to his most famous son. Throughout his life, the tycoon mentioned that Donald Trump was the smartest person he had ever met. He believed that Donald had a kind of Midas touch, turning everything he touched into gold. Nevertheless, through generations, the Trump family has been multiplying its power and the fortune of its members, and now it remains to be seen what the next steps of Donald and his children will be.